in this version. Those of you who are familiar with LEED know that we reference lots of different established standards as benchmarks that we encourage project teams to go beyond. We have increased we've referenced the latest version of the ASHRAE 90.1, the latest version when LEED was being validated of ASHRAE 90.1, which is the 2010 version of ASHRAE 90.1, which is the basis for all the national energy codes, or sorry, the state level energy codes that get adopted. And we have changed the existing building requirement. So we have new construction, building design and construction, as well as existing building. For new construction, we benchmark against ASHRAE 90.1. For existing buildings, operations, and maintenance, we benchmark against Energy Star. And we've increased the stringency of the Energy Star requirement from 69 to 75. So that every building that is now coming through LEED certification is eligible to be an Energy Star building. We've added a couple of new credits, which I'm really excited about, because a lot of the conversation that we heard earlier was about how banged up our utility infrastructure is from an economic standpoint. And I think that there are ways that the buildings industry can be much more integrated into the way that we think about the time and how much energy that we use. So we're building lots and lots of renewable energy, wind and solar, which is wonderful. But the reality is that grid stability is predicated on so making sure that there's power all the time when everybody needs it, which is a stability question, is predicated on hard assets that can be relied on. And if for whatever reason, and it did never happen when I was here, the wind stopped blowing in Indiana, all of those assets that have been invested in, all those windmills, are going to stop turning. They're going to stop producing energy. So from a stability standpoint, the utility response to that is to build backup generation, which they turn on when the windmills and the solar panels stop producing. So that's a very macro level solution. It's kind of like the big tunnel version of the response to combined sewers. We've added a credit for demand response in buildings, which is geared at encouraging project teams to think about operating their buildings based on feedback that they get from the grid. Because in reality, when I turn off a light in a building, a utility generator who manages the transmission and distribution of electricity all over the world can think of that, and actually does think of that, as them turning on a generator somewhere else, right? So if I turn off a light, they consider that to be generation that they don't have to produce. So demand response is set up to allow buildings to be configured to take a signal from the utility grid to say, we are having a problem with this windmill, it's not turning the way we thought it was going to turn. Instead of us turning on a generator upstream, can you curtail your power use for 15 minutes, for an hour, for 25 minutes? And this emerging technology is getting more and more sophisticated, and the ability for utilities to dispatch curtailment as in lieu of generation has tremendous potential for mitigating both the challenges that we see across the board in terms of utilities not having an incentive to help us with energy efficiency and change the paradigms and the models that they operate under, which have basically left their industry very vulnerable to disruptive technologies like PV with battery storage. The other way to think about demand response, I know I gave you the long technical answer. How many of you guys have been in the airport and the announcement comes on that the plane is oversold and more people showed up than they thought would show up, and they're paying people to get off the plane, right? This is exactly what demand response is. The grid is oversubscribed, and the utilities are paying people to get off the grid. change that we made from a technical perspective in LEAD V4 is related to the materials and resources section. We were, previous versions of LEAD were very single attribute optimization focused. So if you look, we use the example of recycled content as a particular thing that we were looking at. But a better example from my perspective is looking at rapidly renewable materials, which was an attribute that we encouraged project teams to invest heavily in previous versions of LEAD. The most ubiquitous rapidly renewable material is, anybody know? Huh? I heard it.
Aluminum.
No, rapidly renewable.
Oh.
Not the opposite of that. It's the opposite, right? Rapidly renewable bio-based material is bamboo, right? Yeah, right. So bamboo is a great product, but we don't grow that much of it domestically. Where do we grow a lot of bamboo? In China, right? And we grow it not, for those of you who have looked into this, the monocultures that exist there in large, huge bamboo farms to satisfy the desire for us to have it here in products are extraordinarily, it's not a biodiverse environment, it is not a particularly stable environment, it is a monoculture, so there's no real soil protection or water protection. You're not investing you're not capturing, because it's a monoculture, you're not capturing the sequestration capacity of the soil from a carbon perspective. It can be, in many instances, just a total disaster, right? So we were optimizing around one particular attribute, and on the opposite end of that, we had the ability to procure locally grown, sustainably harvested hardwood. Right? So we get a bamboo floor or a nice oak floor from an FSC certified forest. So I'm pointing out this sort of challenge because as we have been investing in these single attribute optimization pieces, we did tend to lose sight of the larger picture. And the larger picture is that the carbon footprint of the decision that you make matters as much as the ecosystem footprint of the decision that you make, as much as the water footprint of the decision that you make, as much as the human health impact of the decision that you make. And just optimizing around one particular parameter is not a systems approach. So we have shifted the philosophy of the entire materials and resources section of the LEAD rating system much more towards and based it heavily on multi-attribute life cycle assessment. Right? So when you hear LCA, you will hear it a ton in your careers, and you will do it a ton, hopefully, in your careers. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about multi-attribute optimization across a wide variety of parameters. The challenge with LCA as it's currently practiced, and I think as it will continue to be practiced, because it is optimized for as a particular tool that is very effective across a wide range of environmental impact assessments, is that it's not good at a couple of things. It doesn't identify the human health impacts associated with the decisions that we make particularly well, and it does not assess the ecosystem disruption associated with materials use particularly well. There are indicators for both of those things in most LCA frameworks, but they are the bluntest of instruments in terms of decision making. So to sort of compensate for those two blind spots in LEAD, we've created a couple of credits that are focused on the material health aspects of credits. So we're looking at encouraging project teams to specify materials for which some type of material ingredient disclosure has occurred. You think about this as a nutrition label. You go to the grocery store, you pick up a box of oatmeal, you can see fiber, you can see calories, you can see carbohydrates, right? When you go and specify a material, what do you get? You might get the MSDS, right? You might get the material safety data sheet, which might indicate whether there is a direct toxin that is going to emanate from this particular product. You more than likely will not get that information. So we are trying to create a culture of transparency in the buildings market, building products market that is analogous and allows for the type of decisions that we make when we go to the grocery store across that there. And then to take that information and use it to optimize the decisions that we make. So you'll see 3 of these credits that deal with building product disclosure and then using that disclosure activity as a framework for optimization. It does this on the raw materials side as well. You know, I think that one of the things that as an engineer I tend to put in the back of my head is that we build buildings for people. You know, green buildings are stories about people. They're about the project teams, they're about the way that we engage with our physical environment. They're about how we can optimize and inspire with design, how we can help our kids in school to learn better, how we can help hospital patients heal faster, how we can, you know, make the psychological well-being of people significantly better. So I think that in terms of the